Welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I am Henry Liu, and today I am joined by Christian Diadamo. Christian, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well.
Right. I'm also joined by Porfirio Rangel. Porfirio, how goes?
It's going good, Henry. Happy Spider-Man Day.
Happy Spider-Man Day. Yes, indeed. Today is August 1st, 2024. And we're going to talk about the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie. Just came out last week, and we're going to get into it. Yeah. All right. So let's give the spoiler alert. This is a new movie that came out not long ago, just last week, like I was saying. And there is a lot to be spoiled on here. So
hmm
warning, warning, you've been warned. If you haven't seen the movie, I would suggest tuning out and hopping back on after you've seen it because you don't want to get spoiled to all the tasty surprises in this one. Yeah. So, again, spoiler alert. So, let's get right into the movie. Yeah. Let's get right into it. All the stuff we loved, all the stuff we didn't love, and everything in between. Deadpool and Wolverine. This was a big release. The only Marvel Studios movie of this year, 2024. So there was a lot of curiosity. What would be in this movie? We've seen it now. What do we think? What was good? Let's start with that. What are some of the highlights of this movie? Porfirio, you want to start with stuff you liked?
I mean, right off the bat, as soon as you watch the opening scenes of this movie, I love that it's basic Deadpool, you know? Like that opening Bye 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 song with and by
Mm-hmm.
NSYNC, like right off the bat, you know that you're gonna get another Deadpool ridiculous stupid movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that opening credit scene's like the best opening credit scene of like all time for any movie. It's like all over my feeds. It's super awesome, and that was not Ryan Reynolds, by the way.
Oh, doing the dancing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was some pretty impressive dancing. That doesn't surprise me that it was someone else. Nice. Actually, you made me think of something. You know, in the very beginning, we're like thrown back into the world of Deadpool, and we haven't seen Deadpool for a long time, right? I'm looking at it now. Deadpool 2 came out in 2018, 6 years ago. So yeah, they that was a good move, like just having Deadpool right in your face from the beginning because um yeah, we hadn't seen Deadpool content, live action content in a long time. So it was kind of like we're back. He's back. Yeah. So started off with a bang. What else? What else do we like here? Christian, any call outs?
Yeah. Let's see. I wonder if we should just get right into, I guess, one of the big things that everyone loved. One of the big things a lot of people came for, and why we threw up the spoiler warning pretty
Hmm.
much ASAP. The cameos.
Yeah.
This movie is chock full of them, and they're all great. You want It's definitely great to see a lot of people from the Fox universe uh reprise their roles and kind of come back for one last hurrah. One of the big ones that I think got some cheers in the theater was Chris Evans as the Human Torch.
Yeah.
Because of the way it sets up, you think he's gonna be Cap, you know, being an MCU movie, of course. But he says the flame on. You see the do the film, do the big flame abilities, and then you see him promptly get killed.
Hmm.
Deadpool make a joke on how they can't afford him. like that was one of the first really big ones that you see, and of course the list goes on.
Yeah.
Uh, as, as a fan of Gambit, it was really great to see Channing Tatum as Gambit. That also got some cheers in the theater, and we finally got to see him have this like comic accurate look, throw the cards, have the staff. I think that was definitely another favorite of mine. Do you guys have any big cameo shout outs?
Well, my favorite cameo definitely was Wesley Snipes as Blade. I mean, what a surprise. I couldn't believe it. And I definitely was cheering when that happened. Um, yeah, really cool. And it wasn't we're saying cameos, but the Wesley Snipes appearance was more than a cameo. And I think the Chris Evans and Channing Tatum roles were probably more than cameos also. Like they actually had some screen time, right? So pretty cool. Like, yeah, I still can't believe that Wesley Snipes appeared in this movie as Blade. It's like, what the heck? Yeah.
I
And,
love that you.
oh, go ahead, Christian.
Oh, I was just gonna make a quick shout out that I was so happy when he said the line.
Yeah.
Some motherfuckers are still trying to skate uphill.
Yeah. So great. Oh man. Uh
Yeah,
there were a lot. Any favorites on your end, Porfirio?
X-23 for sure.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've been waiting to see her come back since Logan, and like they never did anything with that character. She was so badass in this movie, and so
Hmm.
when she came back, I was like, oh yeah, she's back.
Yeah.
She was definitely fun to see. She got a lot of, I feel like, more screen time than the other
Hmm.
uh cameos,
Yeah.
and she even went back she got out of that wasteland
Yeah.
place,
Right. 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 Yeah. Yep.
and so it was cool seeing her and Jennifer Gardner as Electra.
Hmm.
That was pretty surprising. I did not see that coming. That was not
Yeah.
on my bingo card.
Yeah. I think there were some rumors about her, right? But to see her actually in the movie was pretty cool.
Mhm. It, I mean, there was just so much going on in this movie. I feel like you had to watch it a few times, but
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't even like Deadpool like make fun of like one like Jennifer Gardner's marriage to Ben Affleck, kind of like, "Oh,
Hmm.
where's Daredevil?" And then she
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, he's not here, or he died, or something like that."
You're not wrong. There was like a very subtle jab there where it was along those lines where like she said like, oh, he's not in the picture anymore. And
Hmm.
Deadpool's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she's like, no, it's not a big deal. Right? So like it's just yeah, it's so meta. The movie is so self-referential. It's crazy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the writing to this movie is just so. I mean, were you guys surprised with how funny and the writing was? Because I remember, because the writer's strike was last year, and I don't know
Hmm.
if affected this film at all, but the writing to this movie was really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely funny. Definitely funny.
Like, I wonder if it was written before the strike. I'm not sure when it was filmed, but I do remember during COVID is when they announced it.
Hmm.
It was like, and it was just, it might have been 2021, and it was just Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman like on a couch together, and
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh,
they were
right.
just talking that the movie was gonna happen. It was real like low key. It wasn't like a big announcement.
Hmm.
It was just them, and then like they kind of like they like quickly like teased like a scene where they'd fight or something like that, and then they said, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be Deadpool and Wolverine" or something like that. There was a quick announcement. I'm not sure how much was written or how much was planned by then, but I do remember, like, I remember hearing about this like 3 to 4 years ago.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
remember that announcement. It was huge because, like Henry said, like we haven't seen Deadpool in
Mhm.
a while,
Yeah.
and this was the first time we were gonna see Deadpool in the MCU, after Marvel bought out or after Disney bought out Fox Studios, So I'm pretty sure like folks were like wondering like how's Deadpool gonna fit in the MCU timeline? And is it gonna be rated R? Is it gonna be tamed? How different of a vibe is gonna
Yeah.
be? And but I think like even like that announcement you said, Christian, of like, oh, that Wolverine is gonna be in this movie. I think fans just went crazy,
Mhm.
when that announcement was dropped, because like one, Deadpool coming back, but two, Hugh Jackman coming back as Wolverine. Like after he already did Logan and he hung up his boots and didn't want to do the role anymore. Like I think that
Mhm.
was pretty big, but that paycheck must have even been bigger.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you're right, Porfirio. There is so much in this movie, and you're just getting hit with everything, like, constantly, and yeah, it does warrant subsequent viewings to catch up on stuff you missed previously, and, it's just chock full of stuff, all kinds of stuff. One thing that stood out to me as a big positive is the movie really is like an honoring of past Marvel movies, and it's almost kind of like a love letter to like Fox Marvel, right?
hmm
It's kind of saying farewell and honoring the past. And it's done in a very unique way because it's sort of like honoring past Marvel movies, but also like taking a giant shit on them too, right? Makes fun of like past stuff and just everything, it's pretty wild, like the balancing act of it all. You mentioned Logan, Porfirio. Like Logan was kind of the perfect send off for Hugh Jackman Wolverine, right? And I think this movie acknowledges that, and it sort of like respects it, and they kind of explain that that Wolverine is really dead, and that perfect ending is intact. And this Wolverine is a different Wolverine, and all the other Wolverines in this movie, yes, there are many, they are different Wolverines as well, right? So it's sort of we're still honoring like that end, and still honoring that movie, and acknowledging that movie's great, and it's nothing has changed with that movie. We're just doing all this other crazy shit, yeah. So yeah, it's wild. It's just like balancing act of making fun of old Marvel stuff and honoring old Marvel stuff, and just like throwing in all these fun Easter eggs and cameos and stuff. So yeah, it's just a wild ride, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, they honor it, but they also like definitely make fun of it. You
Definitely.
dig up the grave of that same Wolverine
Yeah.
and then fight with his skull
Yeah.
and make his own claws out of his adamantium.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I guess that's pretty much how they start the movie because that's what that's when Bye 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 kicks in.
Yeah. So maybe I'll pose that to you guys. Like, do you think the overall vibe was an honoring, or was there any like mean spiritedness of any of it? Like the fact that Jennifer Garner was in this movie as Elektra, like I guess it was cool to see her in the role and kind of see her like how like we wish she was portrayed before, I guess you could say. But at the same time, it's all kind of a joke, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
making fun of how shitty those Daredevil and Elektra movies were before, right?
hmm
So how do you guys feel about that? How is all that handled? Was there anything mean about it, of any of it?
I
Hmm.
mean, I don't think so. I think everything was like in good spirit. I mean, it's fucking Daredevil or Deadpool, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's kind of like don't take it with like a grain of salt kind of thing. Like he shits on everybody. Like he's an asshole, you know?
Yeah.
And he doesn't do it like everything's written not to be like you guys have been saying like disrespectful or anything, you know, like the Logan ending and then yeah, reintroducing these past characters, you know. Um, but I feel like if everyone's on board, you know, Jennifer Gardner, she's in on the joke about like, yeah, like nobody remembers my movie, or in those that do, like know that it was shitty, you know?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
so like nobody's thinking like what that movie was like 20 years ago. Nobody's thinking like, oh, like Electra is always gonna be like my Jennifer Gardner, you know? Like
Yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um but I think it was written in a way where it makes fun of things, but like you said, it at the same time making fun of it like makes, I guess, like newer. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, newer Marvel fans like understand like where all this kind of came from, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
We had to go through the shitty phases for it to be where it is now, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I don't think it's so much making fun of particular actors like Jennifer Garner or whoever, but rather Marvel making fun of itself, just saying, "Hey, look, remember these shitty movies we made before? Wasn't that funny?"
hmm
Like, oh, how times have changed, kind of thing, right?
hmm
So, yeah, I think it was handled pretty well, also.
Mhm. Yeah, I think making fun of it, like, puts it back into the spotlight, you know? And I
Yeah.
think it was so long ago that you almost see it in a bit of a different light,
Hmm. Yeah.
and you're kinda like, "Oh, hey, yeah, that. Oh, I remember that." And it
Yeah.
gives it a nice little send off, even if, like, the movie itself wasn't so great. It's nice to see it once again, you know?
Hmm.
The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, Blade Trinity, Elektra, like, and it kinda points to all these, like, kind of crappy movies, but they were so long ago that seeing it in this movie feels, like, quite nice and, like, a little nostalgic of an earlier time.
hmm
Yeah, definitely. And just to finish up on this whole like love letter to past Marvel movies, there is no mid-credits scene in this movie, but instead we get this little video montage while the credits are rolling, and it's really pretty awesome. It's like this little um love letter to Fox Marvel, yeah. You see footage of like a really young Hugh Jackman and like behind the scenes of like the first X-Men movie, and you see like really early footage of Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, like the first time he played Deadpool. And and they have like the Green Day song playing over, right? I definitely thought of you, Porfirio. I have to ask you, when that came on, did you cry? Did you get emotional?
Oh yeah, for
You know?
sure. For sure.
Yeah, because that song and the images they're showing, I was thinking, oh shit, Porfirio's gonna lose it here.
I mean, like we did our like X-Men like reflection podcast like a few
Yeah,
months ago, you know.
yeah, we
So,
just did it not long ago.
so it was definitely off those feelings. I was like, "Oh
Yeah,
man, this is super fucking sad."
yeah,
Mhm.
Like
yeah.
I think I told you guys before the podcast, like for me, I feel like this movie was kind of like Endgame bit like a farewell to the Fox universe, you know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because you know like Endgame, like that post credit scene really did a lot of focus on like the OG six Avengers, you know,
Mhm.
and you just
Yeah.
can't help but think back, oh my gosh, that's how like from Avengers 1 to Avengers Endgame, that's how far like it's expanded.
Yeah.
And then it's like doing another kind of reflection, like even before the MCU, like again, like all these Fox films that you grew up with 20 years ago, like who would have thought like it would ever come back with like this big legacy? You know, we've talked about
Mhm.
legacy for like those X-Men films, the DC extended universe, you know, like all these films of nerd fandom that we grew up with just always come back later points in our lives, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, well said. And yeah, I guess it's kind of cool in retrospect because those Fox X-Men movies never really got the ending that they wanted, right? They really just had a crash and burn finish where they ended with two really terrible movies, Dark Phoenix and New Mutants, and it was just over, right? So this
Hmm.
movie really is like the farewell send off ending that was really nice to see, right? Um, what was I gonna say? Yeah, and I really like that little video montage ending also. Very nice little touch there. All right, any more call outs for positives for Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah, I got one. I will say the action was also really good in this movie. I
Mm-hmm.
thought a lot of the action set pieces I really like long take action scenes. And there's a really good one where they fight all the different Deadpools, and it has this almost like old boy like shot where pans like left to right, and you see them just fighting all these Deadpools. Uh, the one where they're fighting in the car, I thought
Yeah,
was also a great scene where they're just fighting. You just get 2 guys who are just invincible or,
right.
with healing factor, just and that scene was so brutal, it's so bloody.
Yeah,
Where they're just stabbing each other over and over.
yeah,
It's really tight space.
yeah,
So,
right
yeah, I
on.
thought the act was definitely a step up from the last Deadpool movie.
Yeah, it makes me think of the R rating of this movie. Yeah, that's worth talking about. Um, this movie is now the highest grossing opening weekend of an R-rated movie ever, and it's on its way to possibly being the number one R-rated movie of all time, box office wise. So yeah, this is kind of a landmark, I think, because for a long time, that R rating was, kind of the kiss of death for box office for a long time. Um, It was almost like, oh, if you want like a huge money maker, you can't go R-rated. It just won't be mainstream enough. You won't capture that younger audience, and it just won't happen. But this movie has proven that that rule is just like out the window now, right? You can have a huge money maker and be R-rated. So I think the industry is going to change. I think we're going to see some R-rated movies that are going for like a mainstream audience and going for big box office, right? No longer are they going to be like more the independent type movies or just like movies meant for grown-ups and that sort of thing, right? So, yeah, that's I think it's pretty huge. It could have a huge impact on the industry. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason for it because like what you're saying, Christian, all these action scenes you enjoyed are very violent. You're not gonna see this kind of stuff in a PG-13 movie, right? So it's almost like refreshing to see it. And then for the positive, I wanted to call out was Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. You know, we've seen him in this role a lot before, but never quite like this, right? He's really great in this movie. Hugh Jackman is great. I love the dynamic between Wolverine and Deadpool. It's like it's just sort of like a a classic like mismatch odd couple kind of thing, but it does really work. Um, and like speaking of that R rating, you know, oh, we talked a bit about that past podcast we did about the Fox Marvel movies, and I called out that one cameo that Hugh Jackman had in X-Men First Class where he drops that great F-bomb. Well, I think Feige knows that one F-bomb was great because he had Hugh Jackman drop like tons of F-bombs in this movie, and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine dropping F-bombs is so awesome. Like it doesn't get much better than that. It's so great. Just to see him do that all throughout the movie was highly satisfying to say the least. So yeah, big props for Hugh Jackman in this one. Love
Even
it.
Chr- even Chris Evans had a dirty mouth
Oh
in one
yeah,
scene.
that's right. That's right. That's the post credit scene, which is really
Yeah,
fun.
I
Yeah.
thought I thought there was gonna be like an inside joke about that, like, cause in what was Avengers 2 where um Cap says language, and I thought Deadpool was gonna like throw some kind of inside joke about that, but
Yeah.
no.
I mean,
But
I
it
think
was,
there was an understanding that they were referring back to
uh,
that part of the Cap character, right? Yeah. Yeah, a subtle reference. Yeah. All right.
You see
Go
that
ahead.
coming in the like it's the end credit sequence. I'd totally forgotten about that at that point.
Yeah.
But when he brings it back and you just see him like just list off everything,
Yeah, that's great.
and then you can quote me on that.
Mhm.
All right. So we can certainly continue with positives. Feel free to throw them out, but maybe we can get to some of the negatives. Any negatives you want to call out for this movie at all?
The villain.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay. Go ahead, Porfirio. Let us
I
know what you
agree.
think.
She was okay, like she was really a really cool villain, not gonna lie. What's her name? Cassandra Nova?
Cassandra
Sandra,
Nova, yeah, played by Emma Corrin.
Okay, Cassandra Nova, the sister of Professor X.
Hmm.
I thought she was really badass. I thought she was really cool. She was really introduced as a big baddie and some kind of like sympathy um developed for from me to her, like about like her being trapped there and having to just kind of like be pushed aside from her brother and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as she got out of that wasteland, like I feel like her character just went like downhill, like
Mm,
nosedive straight down. Like it wasn't even like a slope. It was just like a straight down nosedive.
yeah, yeah.
Like the way in my head I'm just thinking like, okay, she's very powerful. She can do this. She could put her hand through your face and do all these crazy like pick your brains kind of nasty shit. Um I'm just thinking like how are they going to defeat her? And then the end solution was that they were going to reverse the energy that she was hooked up to and that was gonna kill her. And I was like, that's so stupid. Like, I think she just had a lot of great potential to be like a a villain for like another like 2 or 3 movies, for
Mm.
this multiverse saga in phase 5 and 6. I Yeah, like I just think she was a waste. Like the whole point of the movie was kind of to like escape that wasteland. It was never really to like fight her, you know?
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that ended up being like a side quest, and it just I just it was her character's not written well. I'll
Mm,
just end it on that rant.
got
Mhm.
it. Christian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think she was a big missed potential. I also think the other villain was there's a lot of missed potential, and that's Mr. Paradox, played
Mm,
by Matthew Macfadyen,
mhm.
Tom Wambsgans, who I was
Yes.
really excited to see after Succession. I really wanted to see Tom on the big screen, but I also thought he was, he was also kind of wasted. He's kind of you kind of forget he's in the movie for like most of it because he
Mhm.
shows up at the beginning and he's the one who kind of sets Deadpool on his quest in a
Mhm,
way. And he's there and like he just kind of shows up at the beginning and the end, you know. I'm not sure if I was expecting too big from him. He doesn't have the big superpowers like Cassandra Nova has, uh, but I don't know, it seems like the 2 villains were just missed opportunities, and they
mhm,
kinda fell by the wayside.
Got it. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even think of the villains in this movie so much just because there's so much going on. Um, yeah, I see what you guys are saying though, and I get it. Um, I guess I didn't really have that much of an issue just because it's a different kind of movie, right? It's not a movie you watch to see what happens to the villains, right? It's more about jokes and surprise appearances and cameos and just a lot of like multiverse madness, right? So I guess personally I didn't have that much of an issue, but I get it. Yeah, they were pretty one dimensional. Yeah, but particularly the Cassandra at the end, like what you're saying, Porfirio. Like at the end of the movie, she's basically just like a cackling one dimensional supervillain, right? I get it. So, what else? Oh, did you guys have something there? Thoughts?
Hmm, I guess you could expand it, like, I think of a negative, I would say, like, I feel like just a lot of the story in general,
Mm,
it was just I mean, it's more of a vehicle for the jokes, the set
mm-hmm.
pieces, the cameos, like, that's really what it's there for. It's kinda there to kinda just put you on this roller coaster ride.
Yeah,
Um, but, like, yeah, I do think the story is definitely a bit on the weak side overall.
yeah.
Uh, like, the Deadpool just wants to get in the Avengers, that's all fun. Wolverine, I think, like, they hype up that, "Oh, he did something really, really bad, oh, no." But I think when they finally revealed it, I was like, "Oh, that's not so bad."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, "Oh, that's wait, everyone hates him in his universe? He's the worst Wolverine?" Like, er, I don't know, like, he was really drunk at the bar and all the X-Men died. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, like, it's like, bro, those are, like, some of the strongest heroes of all time. Like, if Mutant Hunters killed off Storm, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Professor X, how much more is Wolverine gonna
Right.
help him?
Yeah.
Like, eh, um, so I don't know, and like it only kind of comes in the middle of it. At the very end, you don't really see anything, so you're not really
Mm-hmm.
exactly sure. It's just kind of a line and it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. You make some good points there, Christian. I think this is one of those movies where if you think hard enough, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of plot holes and whatnot. Like I did have some issues following what was going on in the movie, right? It's kind of complicated. Like I guess essentially what happened was Deadpool got help from Cable to jump universes, right? So that's how he's able to go to different universes. Like how he was able to go to like the MCU universe and talk to Happy Hogan and try to become an Avenger, right? And then how he was able to jump to like a different Deadpool universe where all his friends are alive, right? Um, so like, I guess like they didn't go into that a whole lot, but I kind of had to piece that together myself. But I guess that's basically what happened, right? But yeah, it is. I did find myself kind of like questioning things and being confused at times. But then usually it'd be like, oh, something really funny happened, or like this great like surprise appearance would happen, and I'd just sort of forget about the plot. So I guess it's kind of that kind of movie, right? So yeah, a little thin on plot and a bit complex and confusing at times, I guess we could say. All right, what else? I did have another call out. So Deadpool himself, like this movie is funny. Like it's laugh out loud funny. It's hilarious. But I guess I should say that Deadpool is the main character of this movie, right? It is Deadpool 3. This is the third of his trilogy, and he gets the most screen time, he gets the most dialogue. And again, Ryan Reynolds is very funny in this role. But with me, Deadpool has always been like, I can only take so much, right? Um, yeah, like at a certain point, he kind of gets annoying to me, and like this movie is chock full of Deadpool. He's nonstop talking, nonstop like throwing jokes at you, and it gets to be a bit much. It really is the reason that I didn't enjoy Deadpool 1 and 2 all that much. Like neither of those I really gave a great rating. And like this one is like far and above better than those two, I think. But at the same time, I still am, and I think I still will always be annoyed by the Deadpool character. And this is not just like movies, but comics, all that, you know. I just think it's a bit much. It- Deadpool is too much to me. His brand of humor is just a bit much. So I've always felt this way that like Deadpool is better in like smaller doses, I think, you know. So it does make me really curious about in the future, when Deadpool appears in the MCU. I mean, there's been no official word, but I assume he'll make some appearances here and there. I think that'd be great, like cameos and just like popping up here and there. I think that'd be so awesome. Kind of makes me think of the Ant-Man character. Like the Ant-Man movies, I don't really care for a whole lot, but I love Ant-Man as a side character, like Civil War and Endgame. Love it. So I'll just say that, like Deadpool, I just my threshold for Deadpool, like, there is a limit, right? So I just can't take too much of them, and there is a lot of them in this movie. So just know that, and it is cool that there's so much going on in this movie and so many things other than just Deadpool to enjoy. Um, but Deadpool himself, yeah, not I'm not the hugest fan of that particular character.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from on that. I do kind of agree Deadpool is better in generally smaller doses, and there were a few jokes that I was like, all right, let's get on with it. Like I think the dog was one where I was like, okay, they're doing the dog again,
Yeah.
or some of the meta humor, some of the wink wink at the camera. This is like the third Deadpool movie too, so like there's a bit of the shtick that there is a bit of seen it before with some of his humor.
Mhm.
I do think they balance it out pretty well generally, and I'm glad that there was definitely a couple jokes that were reused in the second one that I'm glad they didn't reuse here.
Hmm.
And they kind of focus on a completely new cast of characters. Like Deadpool's cast is like barely in the movie
Hmm.
from like one and two, like his friend, and there's like no Colossus, there's no, you don't have his girlfriend in the movie. Um, but yeah, like it's like having Wolverine in there really helps balance him out, you know,
Yeah.
as well as seeing just like having a nice array of Fox characters.
Hey, so kind of along those lines, I think we're kind of getting into just sort of random thoughts territory. But speaking of Deadpool and like the meta humor brand of comedy that he brings, like how do we like interpret all these like self-referential moments, right? So like, the movie's chock full of it where Deadpool says stuff like, "Oh, we can't afford Chris Evans' paycheck, so he's not going to be in this movie that much." Stuff like that. Like how does that even exist in this movie, right? This movie does have like crazy moments of characters across different universes popping up, but in the context of the MCU where the multiverse has been established, all that in a weird way makes sense. It does make sense that we see Jennifer Garner Elektra or Wesley Snipes Blade, right? It's because of the multiverse, right? But how can you explain something like that where the character Deadpool is making reference to like MCU box office, right? Like, how does that make any sense? Like, how do we sort of, I don't know, explain that? Any thoughts there?
You don't. You just go with it.
You go with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's Deadpool.
right. I
Mhm.
mean,
Don't over.
there is comics. This is faithful to the comics, right? Because the Deadpool character in the comics does the same thing. Like he makes this like fourth wall kind of comments, and it's like within the context of the story of the comic book, it doesn't make any sense, but to the reader, it makes sense, right? So there's precedent there. But to me, I can't really resolve it. I can't make any sense of it. So I don't know if Christian, you had any thoughts there.
Yeah, like it feels almost a bit uncanny, you know. It feels
Hmm.
like because you've been following, say, like the MCU for so long, and
Yeah.
they haven't had a character like this. And Deadpool 1 and 2 are definitely off of their own like little smaller bubble, you know.
Yeah.
Deadpool 1 just had like it had Colossus and then um I forget her name, like Teenage Negasonic Warhead, I think was her name.
Hmm.
Like they had like definitely smaller X-Men, and then in like the second one they have Juggernaut, so they like raise it a little bit, but it's still like they're very much off in their own kind of corner, you know? Whereas this one, you know, feels is like a much bigger deal, you know?
Yeah.
It's got way more characters. It shows Happy Hogan, he makes an appearance, like uh y- he talks about Thor, so it feels a bit more like you know, you kind of see the MCU as like a very particular universe that you've spent all this time in that's very interconnected, and you have other multiverse movies, but like a No Way Home and Doctor Strange, but they have a much different vibe. They have a much different take on that multiverse kind of
Hmm.
aspect, even if they
Yeah.
borrow some type, you know, even if they do similar things like uh being bringing older actors from other movies.
Yeah.
But because it's so self-referential about it, it does feel a bit like I guess it's a little bit jarring.
Yeah.
I guess that didn't bother me as much because I think you kinda know what you're getting into, you know, you kinda know
Hmm.
it's like, "Okay, Deadpool, it's gonna do that."
Hmm. I feel like the
Yeah.
close, like, also, I mean, yeah, Deadpool, you kind of expect him to do this, but I feel like Marvel kind of tested this already with She-Hulk a bit, you
Yeah. I
know?
just thought of that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that was, I feel like, a little bit of I enjoyed it, but if I remember correctly from that podcast, you guys didn't like that either. So, so that says something that you guys don't like the breaking of the fourth wall. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. But no, I think like Christian said, it's just you just expect those kinds of things to happen in Deadpool, and you just like, there's no logic. Just go fucking with it, you know?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned She-Hulk. I did think of that just now. They did break the fourth wall there also. Um, and yeah, like in that show and in this film, it's just hard to wrap your head around it. But I don't know, maybe your advice is the best, Porfirio. Just go with it. And like I was saying earlier, there is some there is some stuff in this movie where if you think too much about it, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So you kind of just gotta let it go. You can't be too nitpicky about everything, right? So I guess it's just one of those things. And like I said, there is precedence in the comics where Deadpool does stuff like this. I was just thinking in Deadpool 2, like he makes reference about Josh Brolin being Thanos in the movie, right? Like, yeah, I think he calls Cable Thanos at one point, right? It just like within the context of the film, it just doesn't make any sense at all. But as a viewer, it does make sense, and it is funny, right? So, yeah, I guess it's just one of those things. Just go with it.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's another thought. Okay, going into this movie, there was a lot of speculation, a lot of wondering about is this going to start to pave the way to the introduction of the MCU X-Men? And I think we could safely say that it did not. There was really nothing of that at all. And if anything, instead of looking forward to any sort of new MCU X-Men, it was more of a looking back at the past Fox X-Men, right? Um, and yeah, like so there was really nothing to speak of in terms of like MCU X-Men, teasers or just little hints, nothing, right? So, yeah. Any thoughts there? Do you think there should have been something like that? I don't know. Thoughts at all?
I mean, we didn't get any X-Men Easter egg. We got a Thor Easter egg, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe we can talk about that scene real quick. So at the TVA, Deadpool sees himself being kind of cradled by Thor, right? And Thor's crying. And then all throughout the movie, Deadpool's like, why is Thor crying? And it seems like it's going to lead to something in the future, right? Because they never explained what that was about in this film, right?
Hmm.
So it seems like it's going to lead to something. What do you guys think it is? Any speculation at all?
Could be something in Secret Wars.
Hmm.
Could be bringing Deadpool back for the big, the massive team up, the
Yeah.
Avengers later
Uh-huh.
on. Or it could just be a gag and we'll never see anything like that again.
It'll just there to torture us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene, I'm calling it right now. Doctor Doom takes away Deadpool's powers and he becomes human and you
Mhm.
could kill him and he kills him and Thor is sad about it.
Oh, yeah,
You
you heard
never
it here
know.
first.
Never know. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, before I mentioned how maybe we'll see Deadpool again, the more I think about it, there's no question. The amount of money this movie's making, of course, Deadpool is going to appear at some point in the future of the MCU, right? And this scene with Thor and Deadpool, I think, undoubtedly will appear later on. Yeah.
What about, are we gonna get more Hugh Jackman? That's a better question.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, the end of this movie does allude to the fact that they're leaving the door open, right?
Hmm.
They're definitely
Hmm.
leaving the door open. Yeah, there's a bit of a tease at the end where Deadpool and Wolverine are both in grave danger, right? Seemingly they're both going to die, right? And then seemingly just one of them is going to die, right? And then neither of them die. They're both alive at the end. And we're definitely going to see Deadpool again, like we've been saying. And with Wolverine, it seems like they're leaving the door open. I don't know. What do you guys think? Are we going to see Hugh Jackman don the Wolverine suit again in the future?
Hmm. Like I know they'll want him to, especially like I feel like if we see him again, it might be in Secret Wars or something as a
Hmm.
little moment, and that's it.
I could see that.
Um, I don't know if he'd want to do Wolverine in like a starring role again, like kind of like this.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like after Logan, he was like, "All right, I'm done. This is like too much on my body.
Yeah.
I am done." And somehow they convinced him to be, brought back for this. And he's been playing the old Wolverine character for like quite a few movies now. Like he was
Yeah.
old Wolverine in Days of Futures Past. He was old Wolverine in Logan, and now he's kind of an old Wolverine again in this movie.
Yep.
I f- I feel like, well, two things. I have two things to say. I think one, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is gonna come back, but maybe, yeah, like not have like supporting role, maybe a smaller role, because
Yeah.
I feel like um those demons that he is dealing with about like how he failed the X-Men, is gonna come back because we're gonna have like this like final battle scene in Secret Wars where like I feel like somehow the X-Men are gonna have a big role in it, like the Fox X-Men with like the OG X-Men cast maybe might come, and
Hmm.
he might have like this kind of like find peace being with them again, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
that's like the end of Hugh Jackman for sure this time. For sure.
For
Um,
sure, for sure.
for sure, for sure. But so I think that's gonna be the end for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, but I don't think we're not done by a long shot with the Wolverine character in the Marvel
Oh yeah,
universe.
no question.
Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Henry, because you were there, but I heard that at Marvel at San Diego Comic-Con that Captain America 4 is supposed to introduce the what's it called? What Wolverine's made out of?
Mhm.
Anti
Uh,
anti
Adamantium.
antimanium, that it that that
That
that that
metal.
that metal,
Yeah.
that movie's gonna introduce that metal from the celestial body from the Eternals movie.
Hmm.
So maybe they could be cooking up the project in the MCU with that material, that they
Hmm.
still haven't made their Wolverine yet. So
Hmm.
The new Weapon X.
the new Weapon
Yeah.
X, exactly.
Solid call outs there, Porfirio. And yes, it is true. I was in Hall H this past Saturday and witnessed the San Diego Comic-Con Marvel Studios panel, and they showed footage from Captain America Brave New World. And there was a moment where adamantium was mentioned. So that is true. And I think there is no question that we'll see a new Wolverine at some point in the MCU. It's for sure. After Disney acquired Fox, it was just like, okay, it's just a matter of time before we get a new X-Men team, and certainly a new Wolverine, right? So that's my take. Um, oh, but going back to, um, oh, will Hugh Jackman come back? Will so and so come back? Blah blah blah. You know, in recent events have told us that anyone can come back, right? We saw Chris Evans return to Marvel in this movie. And then, speaking of Hall H Comic Con, Robert Downey Jr. himself is returning to the MCU, right? So, in my mind, anything's possible. Anytime you've seen an actor in a Marvel project, they could potentially return. Maybe not necessarily as the character they played originally, but everything's on the table, right? I kind of get the sense that Kevin Feige has a really good relationship with the actors who have worked in his stuff, and he's just like a really nice guy. And Marvel's got a lot of money to play with, and he's got a knack for making things happen, right? So, again, anything's possible. And for those who thought the last you would see of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine was Logan, well, that wasn't the last. And I think the same can be said here. Like, this could be the last we see of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in Deadpool and Wolverine, but don't count on it. Don't count on it. All I'm saying.
They even make a joke about it in the movie. It's like, "Oh, you're gonna be doing this till you're 90."
Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah. All right.
Wait,
Any other
I gotta ask a
thoughts?
question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Um, you know that end scene where like fucking Daredevil or not Daredevil, Deadpool and Wolverine like hold each other's hand and power up the thing that ends up
Mm,
destroying Cassandra Nova?
yeah.
And then you know how like Wolverine's shirt like starts peeling off and then off shows his six pack?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you think that was actually Hugh Jackman or do you think he was CGI'd?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good question.
I heard it what I heard it was all Hugh Jackman, but they might have done some CGI, or he did have his mask on. That's
He
when they
did.
brought out
I
the
noticed
mask, so
that too. I noticed
it
that too.
it could be a stunt double.
I
My
mean like
take was that it was him, but I didn't do any like research or anything.
how old is he now? Like 50 something?
Something
Uh,
like that.
was born in 1968. So,
So he's approaching 60
yeah,
basically. Mid 50s.
that's I know that's pretty hard physique to
Yeah.
keep.
Right?
Hugh Jackman has definitely said that like the physique is definitely like keeping that physique for those movies
Is
has
why
definitely
he
worn him down.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's why I was just like, is that really him or is that CGI? Is that like
Well, as you would say, Porfirio, just go with it.
just go with
Just accept it.
it.
It's
Don't think too
Wolverine. It's just
don't
Wolverine.
don't think too hard about it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. All right. Any other random thoughts about this one?
Hmm. I think like this definitely almost feels like there's parts of this movie that feels like a better version of I guess I'll dig it. I'm the DC guy, so I'll take it take a dig at DC right here. This because it's a multiverse movie. There's definitely parts that reminded me a lot of like The Flash.
Yeah.
And I think there's parts that I'm like, oh, that I remember stuff like that really didn't work in The Flash, but it really worked in this movie. All the cameos, like that are just kind of these quick moments. But I'm really glad they kind of gave everyone something to do.
Hmm.
Everyone kind of has like at least like a joke, a line, or an action sequence. and so I think that that goes a long way for the theater experience,
Hmm.
rather than just like, yes, when they show up, you cheer even more because they have something to do, and they get a cool fight scene. I really like that fight scene with like Blade and Gambit and X-23 and Elektra in the wasteland.
Yeah.
I th- I thought that was a really cool moment.
Yeah, I like that moment too. It was almost like, well, here's what you didn't get to see from a lot of these characters before. Like particularly Gambit, right? You literally didn't see
Mhm.
that before because they never made that movie, right?
Yeah.
So you got to see that. You got to see Electra do her thing in an actually good movie. Now, here's one thing I want to call out. Like Wesley Snipes is in this movie as Blade, and as I was saying, I couldn't be more thrilled that he appeared here. But in a way, I feel like he kind of didn't belong here, right? This wasteland was made up of like the misfit losers, all like the trash Marvel movies and like the characters you kind of don't care about. But I fucking love Wesley Snipes' Blade, right? So while I was excited to see him, I was like, he kind of doesn't belong here in a way, right? So that scene we're talking about is cool because like, oh, it's a big showcase. Like here's the cool Gambit shit that you could have seen but you didn't. And here's the cool Electra stuff that you could have seen but you didn't. But with Blade, I got a bunch of dope Blade shit with those Wesley Snipes movies, right? So um I kind of felt he didn't belong. Not to mention that the Blade movies are not Fox movies. Those are like New Line, right? So um Blade was he kind of stuck out a bit. Like he didn't quite fit in with all of this. I think it probably was a case where like, word got out like, oh, Wesley Snipes is actually he'd be willing to do this. Like, oh, we got to do him, so they just put him in there kind of thing. But I don't know. I just felt like maybe he didn't fit uh so great in this one. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah. Um, he didn't as much, but I was still very happy to see him.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
I
I
think,
suppose the argument could be that Blade Trinity is kind of like I don't know, looked poorly upon. So you could regard that as the quote unquote shitty Marvel movie warranting his appearance in this movie. I guess
mm,
you could
which
explain
is
it
also
that
where
way.
he worked with Ryan Reynolds. Yeah,
And no, that too, right? That's a nice little connective
it's
tissue there.
probably like Ryan Reynolds probably like personally convinced him to come back too. And
I
like, oh
see.
hey, I know we did this movie, wasn't that great, but here you go. You want to play Blade again?
Go.
Show up, kind of all the Blade news we've been hearing lately.
Right. Which another reference they make in the movie. So,
Which I heard
you know,
none of it was talked about at San Diego Comic Con.
oh, the upcoming Blade
Yeah.
movie.
Uh-huh.
It was not mentioned at all. Nope.
This is the closest thing we got to
Uh,
hearing about
I
Blade.
guess so.
I'm
All
surprised
right.
Taylor Swift wasn't in this movie
So does that mean she's gonna be Dazzler for real in the MCU?
in the MCU as X-Men.
That'll be her debut.
There you go. All right. So maybe we can move on to our ratings, yeah? What would you give Deadpool and Wolverine on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 being worst, 5 being best. Any volunteers to kick us off here?
I'll go first. Let's
All right.
see. I think for this one, I think I'm feeling a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed myself a lot in the theater. This was a lot of fun. I do think the plot is very loose. They play it very loose and fast with the plot and some of the villains, and you're not really supposed to think about it too much. You just want to have fun with the set pieces. But I don't think they really stand out quite the same way, say like the Green Goblin did in No Way Home.
Hmm.
or the Scarlet Witch and Multiverse of Madness. But I think with that you just have a lot of fun with the characters, a lot of, and it's great to see everyone. And so I am curious to see what this movie will be like 20 years from now when all these references are kind of
I
far behind us. I'm
Yeah,
curious to see how this movie ages, but it's so rewatchable
mhm.
that we'll still probably having a good time with it regardless. So, 4 out of 5.
cool. I can go next. So I too will give it a 4 out of 5. This film is a whole lot of fun. I laughed my ass off. It is a real treat for Marvel movie fans. Like, if you've been watching Marvel movies for the last 25 or so years, you'll you'll get a huge kick out of this movie. A huge kick, man. Um, MCU, Fox, Marvel, the Blade movies, um, even just like movie news. If you were following the whole Channing Tatum Gambit saga, like you'll get something out of this one. And yeah, it's just tons of fun, tons of laughs, and yeah, there is the aspect we were talking about before where it's oddly a very sweet love letter to the Fox X-Men movies, you know? Like unexpectedly um like emotional for those end credits, right? Where you see that old footage and stuff, man, it's like it kind of gets you. So a whole lot to like about this one. Although, like we've been saying, it's one that you don't want to think too much about, right? The more you think about it, the less sense it'll make and the more frustrating it'll get. So you kind of got to just go with it. And that's a bit of a problem because I feel like with um, the MCU has mostly been good with that sort of thing. If you think about it a lot, there is an explanation for things, right? Um, a lot of the filmmakers are like they make things kind of airtight that way, right? Um, but this one isn't in that camp. This is not a movie you want to think about too much. It definitely is just go with it, go for the ride, and enjoy kind of film. So 4 out of 5. How about you, Porfirio?
Yeah, I give it a 4 out of 5. Fours across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, very similar to what you guys are saying. It's a very fun movie, lots of laughs, lots of great cameos. If you've been watching X-Men movies since 2000, you'll have a great time just knowing all these like inside jokes. I got a lot of great, cool reflections. Um, but the story isn't the best, and the villain, like I always say this, very Marvel movie. A movie is only as good as its villains, and this movie was not that good with its villains.
Mm.
Um, so it was just kind of like, yeah, a big disappointment that this villain could have been so much bigger and they could have done so much more with it. Um, but that's a Deadpool movie, and what else can you expect from a Marvel movie? Um, so yeah, 4 out of 5. Definitely enjoyable. I feel like I need to watch this a few more times to catch all the cool little cameos and all that kind of stuff. But it was fun.
Right on. Okay, let's wrap up on some comics recommendations. So we covered Deadpool and Wolverine. Do we have some Deadpool and Wolverine comics to talk about?
Yeah. Um, I haven't read a ton of Wolverine, so I'm gonna throw out. I think just I'll say this is a good place to start with Wolverine, and that is the iconic uh, Wolverine solo series, drawn by Frank Miller and written by Chris Claremont. It goes about Wolverine's time in Japan. It's what the Wolverine was based off of, and it's from 1982. It's kind of his first real solo series, and yeah, it's great. It's very iconic. I love that classic Frank Miller art, and you get to see Wolverine a little out of his element and away from the X-Men. So I do highly recommend Wolverine.
Excellent pick. And how about Deadpool? Porfirio, do you have a Deadpool pick for us?
Yeah, so this is one I got into a while ago. It's called King Deadpool. Um, it came out in 2019, and it's basically Deadpool. He's like king of the monsters in Staten Island. It's totally ridiculous. This the it, some characters that we are familiar with come out in it, like Captain America, Elsa Bloodstone from the Werewolf by Night series. She's in it. Um, and it's pretty, if you've never read a Deadpool comic, it can be a lot to handle because there's definitely a lot of like fourth wall breaking and a lot of crude jokes. And I feel like, especially you, Henry, because you said you can only take like Deadpool in small doses. This may not be the best read for you,
Mm, mhm.
Like there's definitely a lot of Deadpool. Um, but it is Deadpool nevertheless with the crude jokes and dirty humor.
Right on. Okay, great recommendations. And I think we can say across the board, we do recommend the Deadpool and Wolverine film. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. And if you've seen it, go see it again, right? You can catch all the stuff you missed the first time. We certainly missed a lot of stuff, I think. And with that, we can wrap up the episode. This is farewell from Henry, Christian, and Porfirio.